Hello, everyone. I'm back for another episode of the Feeling and Healing podcast. Danielle Z, your host. And today I am so happy to welcome Pennie Wilson. She is the founder and creator of, is it Kokoro
We've
Creation?
Americanized it. Kokoro, core being in the center.
Love it. And I love that work because I do a lot of work with being your core self. And I think a lot of us, we can go up, well, we can talk about this, are draped in perfect protective mechanisms that are showing their core selves. But
Yeah.
Penny works with soul-led creators to release old patterns from their lives and fear and uncertainty so they can lead their way through life with clarity, purpose, and empowered creation. So welcome, Penny. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining me.
Thanks so much, Danielle. It's a joy to be here.
Great. I'm so happy to have this conversation. And we're gonna start off about one of my favorite things to talk about is patterns. And for you, as you mentioned, you help people release old patterns. So what would you say is something that, you can look at when you're looking at somebody's life or you're working with your clients of like what is the sign that might be in a negative pattern cycle or a certain pattern?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I love this question because we can't recognize a pattern until we know there is such thing as a pattern, right?
Yep,
So
that is
patterns are
correct.
everywhere. And if you've ever heard of the Fibonacci series, it's one of my favorite patterns that teaches us patterns in nature. How it goes from imagine a seashell, how it goes from that small
Yes.
swirl to the large swirl, right? So, and it happens in pine cones and sunflowers. And like once you notice it, you see it everywhere.
Isn't nature beauty? Yeah, nature is amazing.
Fantastic. Like it's one of
Yeah.
my favorite things. So, when it comes to human patterns, the challenge in recognizing them is that they're unseen. They're in our own mind. Like how do you recognize a pattern? It's lived experience. What do you
Mm,
do to see that? So, journaling, obviously, taking it from unseen in your mind to seen on paper
mm,
could be a huge way to recognize patterns like what's going on? What am I thinking? You can do thinking patterns like what's happening in this relationship? What do I tend to do in those moments of getting triggered? And why is this showing up again and again? I had a client recently that she wanted to have a business, she wanted to do XYZ moving forward, but she kept running into this wall and she couldn't
mm.
figure out what it was. She's like, I keep sabotaging myself. What is it? And I said, well, we can only know from your subconscious mind. So we did a few sessions and we discovered something that was in childhood that has been holding
Mm.
her back. And that was very heavy for her to discover. But now that she's seen it, she can work through it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
recognizing those patterns is huge and just finding those, what is it that is stopping me? I think is a really good question. But you can
Mm,
also look at different areas of your life. Is this at home? Is it at
mhm.
work? Is it showing up in my relationship with my kids? And those patterns of those core beliefs are going to keep showing up in all areas and recognizing what you're feeling. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the intro on that.
No, I love that. And I will say, and I'm a big like, you have to look in because that's the thing. Our outward will reflect our internal world reflects our external world. And
Yeah.
I've learned in my own healing journey and the work that I do with my clients as well, is that I love that story about your client that you kind of had to dig a little deeper of kind of like an
Mhm.
inner child
Yeah.
wound, if you say, and how that shows up. Because if you don't heal it, and I can share from personal experience, it will continue to show up in your life, in your relationships, at your work, in coping mechanisms. So
Yeah.
I will sit here and validate that it's a very powerful thing. But once you know about it and you can do some work and heal it and you're aware of it, I think that is the first step towards transformation, is that awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Recognizing it is definitely the first step. And a lot of people get to that place of recognizing it, and sometimes they'll go into the criticism voice of shame, or I should know better, or I shouldn't be doing this. But simply allowing yourself to recognize a pattern without trying to change it immediately
Mm,
just allows you to sit in that compassion. I don't have to change this. Let's just take
yeah.
the first step to recognize what's going on and have compassion for that past part of you that honestly didn't know better. Because if you could see the pattern, you would probably change the pattern, right?
Yeah.
Lots
I
of
mean, I love that you
compassion.
brought up too, like you can't fix a pattern that you actually somebody she was on my podcast, Danielle Costanzo, she's another family therapist. She said the same thing. She's like, you cannot interrupt a pattern that you don't recognize, that you
Exactly.
don't even know and are aware of that it's a
Hmm.
pattern. That's
Yeah.
why and it could show up as different things in your life. As you said, you have to look at multiple areas of your life to see where it comes up. Like I'll use, I guess for me as an example, like I know and I'm struggling with this, but I guess like people pleasing is kind of
Mm.
a pattern that has shown up in my life, but it showed up as work, as like overextending
Yeah.
myself to people, showed up in my personal life as like, like, oh, kind of yesing people and not standing up for
Mhm.
myself and my boundaries and kind of letting, to be honest, like for lack of a better term, people like kind of walk all over me a little
Yep.
bit.
Hmm.
Um, and I had to tie that and I had to look at my life and be like, all right, at work you do this, in your personal life you do this, like in your family, like in your family relationships you do this. And then I found that like one common thread. And then I was able to like the work you did with your client, I was able to tie it back to ironically, which is I would say, and don't quote me on this, but I'm sure with the work you do, you get this too. A lot of our wounds happen in childhood, and a lot of our core wounds
Yeah.
happen in
Right.
childhood. So
Right.
I was able to trace back that coping mechanism and that pattern to my a core wound because I'm adopted. So even though
Hmm.
I have a wonderful adoption story, I was able to trace that back to my inner wound of feeling of abandonment.
Yeah.
And once
Exactly.
I figured that out and was like, huh. And of course I did work, I won't bore you with the details of
Hmm.
what I did to get to where I am now, but I needed to get to that root cause of it
Exactly. Yeah.
in order to change what I was doing, my behaviors. And then, oh my gosh, after I figured that out and that I changed some things in my life and did the work, as I like to say,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
amazing how I walk through the world so differently. And I realized like they kind of they felt like those like my urge to people please is of course I don't want people to be unhappy, but
Hmm.
you know.
Right. Yeah. But people pleasing comes from a place of letting go of what you need and putting
Mm.
others' needs
Yes.
above yours. Oh, I don't need anything. I'll just do for them what they want me to do. So it's not an equality mindset where my needs are just as important as other people. It comes from a place of inferiority, a place
Mm.
where I have to serve other people or do things that they expect. Sometimes people get in the mindset of have to. Like I talked to someone yesterday, she's like, when I get up in the morning, I feel that feeling. Like, do I
Yes,
really want to
yes.
go to
They're like,
work? Like, that's dread, right? And what is it that's causing that feeling? And you dig into it and you're like, okay, why do I feel this way? Well, is there something I'm expecting myself to do, something I have to do for someone else? And really digging into that. One of the tools that really has helped me and our community, a lot of clients, is I use a tree, the image of a
mm,
tree. And this I all the tools that I use are intuitively learned. I didn't get them from a book or anything, but I really do have a gift to understand what's happening in my own head, and then images get placed in my mind about how to solve that thing that I'm working through. So the tool of the tree is that in the circumstances, recognize first on the outside what's happening. What are
mm,
the visible facts? What can I
yes.
see and measure? And if I'm watching a movie, if someone else is seeing this, how do I see this as a fact? And then the trunk of the tree is the emotions. Okay, what does this
Mhm.
look like from the inside? What am I feeling about those circumstances? And then going deeper into the roots, it goes into what do I believe? What does this mean
Mhm.
to me? So connecting it down to the core beliefs. And those core beliefs are absolutely important. And all of those, the default wirings, I call them, that was created. All of the brain wirings was created before you were 7. All the things that you
Oh,
believe about
absolutely.
who you are and your value and all of that, all those experiences go into that. So that's why it always goes back to the childhood. Like some people might feel like it's an overused story. Well, there's a
Yeah.
reason why it always goes back to childhood because that's where your core beliefs were created.
Well, also too, that's when you're new to the world. You're impressionable. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not developed enough, like fortunately and unfortunately, to come up with core values yourself. That's why I also find the work that I'm doing now with becoming a family therapist, so empowering and powerful is that,
Hmm.
and I don't like to blame family, but like it's so, that's as you said, like, oh, it's before you're 7 years old.
Yep.
So who are the people that you're mostly around before 7 years old? Like I
Hmm.
would say majority is family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so a lot of it, and I use that term. I mean, I'm very open with my inner child, and I have a good relationship with my, that part of myself. But
Hmm.
I get it. It's not easy to revisit that place once
Hmm.
you have reached adulthood.
Yeah.
We think like, and I love your metaphor of the tree.
Mm.
And that, the emotions are kind of like, because I'm a feelings girl.
Yeah.
So, and I hate to say it, what's the strongest thing on a tree? The trunk normally.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Not to shoot my own horn there, to be like I'm an emotions person, but I love that, and also too, like what you can see versus what you can't.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I remember one time as a parent standing on my porch thinking about kids. I have five, and they were growing up. They were pretty young at the time. And just recognizing that everything that I tell them, they believe is 100% true. And
Mm,
I knew that I was not the person that I wanted to be back then. But it was
mm.
just a very raw awareness of, man, this is such a big responsibility, such a precious gift of being a parent and holding that space for them, trying to show up the best that I can, and at the same time recognizing that they're going to have their own story. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean I think too, and I'm sure as you kind of just mentioned, your relationship with yourself and when you get out into the world and you can form your own beliefs, I think show a lot about your past. So you kind of have to revisit that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know for me personally, it took me, I don't want to say, I hate using the word conditioned because, but we all are conditioned in a certain way. But like, I was on a certain path in my life and my business, and I decided to like change that and totally, I left the corporate world, revamped my life. And I mean, nobody told me to do that. Like, that was just something that like my inner knowing,
Yeah.
felt. And I kind of look back and I'm like, how much of my I mean, I got there. I finally made that transformation and made that change. But if I would have gotten there sooner if I wasn't kind of on the path that I was before, like, or like,
Mm-hmm.
conditioned to kind of be like, you just, go and work for somebody else and, go climb the corporate ladder. Like, would
Right.
I?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, there's expectations and hopes and dreams that all of us have in our heart, and we're trying to reach some kind of fulfillment and joy, right? That's the biggest question all of us go through is, and I remember thinking when I was a teenager, how are people happy? Because I was depressed at a very early age, and it baffled me. Confidence baffled me.
Mm,
All of those questions that just began to go through my mind. So, but there are patterns, and I love that you say that it starts with that inner journey of yourself, patterns of healing. So, one of the patterns that I noticed in that healing journey is first in the heart, my individual heart, me changing me choosing to look
yes.
inside. I can't be a good parent if I don't
Hmm.
take that time to pay that price to know myself. A lot of people want to put off,
Hmm.
especially people pleasers, they want to put off, I don't need self care. I don't need to take that time for me. I'm taking away
Yeah.
from my family if I take that time for me. But it's the most important thing you can do, the highest leverage activity, because it circles out from that point of in your own heart. Then, secondly, I'm seeing centrifugal circles in my mind. So, first circle in the center of a bullseye is your heart. Second
Hmm.
center is your home, and then your third center being your work. And each of
Yes.
those stages ripple about from how you feel about you on that inner circle.
No, and I always say to people, you would probably agree that the relationship with yourself sets the tone for all of your other relationships. So
Absolutely.
you'll know, and being a family therapist and somebody that is all relational. I mean, I've told that to myself for many years I've been alive, 30, 37, 38 years now that I've been alive on this life. And I've found that to be true, that if something is or like the version of Danielle that people have met, like maybe weren't the best of friends because I wasn't there from a self-love perspective. And
Yeah.
I know the whole like metaphor is overused, but I will always say the like airplane mask metaphor. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to put your
Yeah.
airplane mask on yourself
Mm-hmm.
first before you can help anybody else
Right.
because you're of no use to them if your glass isn't full.
Absolutely. Yeah. It does remind me also of another pattern of when we notice things that are wrong about other people, our
Mm,
first instinct is to point and blame. Like, what is the
mm,
problem? Our natural inclination is that our brain is going to be pointed toward what's wrong. And
hmm. Yeah,
before
that's why
that's
we're
what's
wired.
exactly right. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? But we're pointing to problems that we see in other people. And when someone turns to that inner work, it becomes to how is that showing up in me? Am I noticing that problem in my own behavior, in my own patterns?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think, and I would love to know because I know there's like, and I struggle with this as somebody who works with a lot of people on their inner work. Like, I want to find a different word for it, but there really is no other. Like, I'm like, I always say like I want to be like a little bit more softer with it, but like I'm like it is really work, you know.
Uh
Like
huh.
I don't want to be, put lipstick on a pig here and like be like, oh yes, no. Some of it is pretty you're in the trenches of your
Yeah.
yourself, and but it's like what how would you describe inner work, or what does that look like for you and the work
Yeah.
that you do with your clients? Because I know for everybody it is different.
Right. I had a client, she like, I hate the word work. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at how
I know,
you
let's look at it in a
feel.
different way. Yeah.
How do you feel about work and
Yeah.
what experiences did that come from? So
Hmm.
really looking about the way that they feel about that word. I love the inner journey. I
Ooh,
love being
okay.
able to discover the new way that I can see myself heal and unfold. So, the image that I have in my mind, and I know many people describe it like an onion, don't like that image. Let's replace that with a flower, a rose, a
Okay.
beautiful flower that's budding and, it's coming to fruition and it takes one tiny little unfolding at a time. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's the love and the feeling that you have for that work that's going to come out in the way that you talk about it.
Yeah, no, and I will say too, I always feel bad saying it's inner, but I'm like, I mean, I personally don't, I'm not afraid of work. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, when I hear work, I'm like, all right, like, I know, like,
Yep.
you gotta do the work. And I use that term a lot with my clients, with my friends, and I'm like, you got to do the work. And they sometimes
Mm-hmm.
look at me. I'm like, because it is work. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
this stuff doesn't just, like anything, right? It's
Yeah.
like, like unfortunately, there's a level of pain that's going to be
Right.
scratched. Like it's like going to the
Mm-hmm.
gym, I say. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
in order to like get in shape, like you're gonna be sore.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
you're building new muscle mass. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have, it's not you're not gonna have this easy breezy experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I think the work that we do with people is so important because I will
Mm-hmm.
also say like it's very difficult to navigate on your own. Even though it is an internal journey,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to navigate on your own because like I mean I have blind spots. I have coaches and I have a therapist. Like
Mm-hmm.
they tell me a lot of what I need to work on and I love that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's hard when when you don't have those mirrors in your life to show you
Mm-hmm.
what maybe needs some healing or what needs some you need to look at a little bit more.
For sure. Yeah. And finding those answers is absolutely the next thing. That's part of the unfolding, right? The next answer that shows up for you that's going to lead you to that fulfillment, the purpose, the passion. Why are you born? What do you feel joy with? And one of the ways that I guide people is to find those answers inside of themselves. So
Hmm.
we can
Yep.
be like talking about a menu, right? We can list the names and the ingredients and talk about all the food, but the work that we do is really going to taste the food, to
Yes.
experience the food.
Yes.
So to feel those experiences, and honestly, I feel like it's such a privileged sacred experience being able to be with them in that moment of them. I feel like it's Luke Skywalker going into a cave, right, where they're
Mm.
afraid to face that fear. What are they going to find? And there's a lot of stories in their head about not wanting to face that, but once they muster up that brave courage and commitment, and we get to face that together, it really is a beautiful unfolding of discovering what they experienced and how they feel about it and the beliefs that they created in that moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I always like to say like anything in life, whether it be a good, bad, negative, positive, or neutral experience, like you can always find the learning from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's how I like to approach my life is like, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And it's
Right.
up to you in
Mm-hmm.
order to be like, okay, like, we talked about patterns and just be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
notice that and be like, all right, like, how can I use this to improve myself or,
Right.
focus, change a belief? Because that's another thing too. I think, when you think of the word like core and core beliefs, like those things, like even inner child, like wounds, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
they like all of these things can be healed, they can be transformed, they are
Yep.
malleable, they're not
Mm-hmm.
fixed,
Yep.
and we're able to work through them. So I like, like I always like, I mean, I like the term like the foundational aspect of like using the term core, but I always say to
Mm-hmm.
people like, you can always knock down the house and build a new one. You have
Mm-hmm.
every day you have an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Right. But like you said, from that inside perspective, what do I knock down? What do I let go of?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was I literally knocked down the whole house, but I get it. Like for some people, it's yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
like, oh, maybe you just need an addition, or maybe you just need
Right.
some renovation in
Yep.
one room. You don't need to knock down the. For me, it was
Mm.
a entire knockdown.
Yeah.
But
Yep. Yep.
I understand for some people that and that's a lot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole a whole new transformation. But I will
Yeah.
say I haven't looked back after that experience. I'm
Yeah.
very, I mean, and you never know, maybe in a couple years I'll knock down again. I have no idea, depending on what happens,
Yep.
with
We'll see
weather, what
more.
happens in my life, I don't
Yep.
know, but that's
Unfolding.
just,
Yeah. I
that's how I view at least my life. I don't
yeah.
expect everybody else to live like
For
that.
sure, yeah. And I love that you said a minute ago that you can see it as it's happening to you or it's
Mm,
happening for you. And that really is a belief. It's connected to something much deeper. I teach a framework called TED or the Empowerment Dynamic, and it comes from a book called The Power of TED, written by
mm,
David Emerald. But it's based off of Karpman's drama triangle, right?
triangle. Yep. The
And so he
victim,
calls it the
the
dreaded drama triangle. Yeah. And when that victim is in that victim place, they feel powerless. They feel like they don't have control. They feel like they can't have what they want. And they come from that place of feeling like life is always happening to me because they can't control it or they feel like they can't control it. And they haven't yet recognized how they can claim their power to see it
mm.
from that other perspective, to see it is happening for me. So that's what the journey really is, going from that place of feeling powerless into recognizing you do have the power to choose.
Yeah, no, and I will say that's also not an easy um I guess concept to like come up with, you know what I mean? Because I think it's easier, I'm sure you work with people too. It's easier to be like, "Oh, but to take it is that's the easier mindset to take." Is
Mm-hmm.
that victim, "Oh my gosh, this keeps happening to me. This keeps happening to me." But it's like
Mm-hmm.
I've always found too is knowing like where I'm at in my life. Like it's like what and I'm a big, I would say one of my core values is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always like, and sometimes even in the negative, where I'm compensating for like others in like inability to be accountable. I'm almost like taking up too much
Yeah.
accountability of things or things that aren't mine. I'm not picking up those things, but one of my big things is like whatever I'm putting out. Like I am not a victim of my circumstance at all because it all starts with me. So even
Mm-hmm.
if it is something external happening in my life, I look back and I'm like, but like, how am I feeling right now? Am I projecting a certain energy out in there to be getting that feedback coming back to me? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it always starts with me, but also
Right.
too, I
Yep.
know I've done some work on myself.
Right? Yeah. But that's powerful too, because if you created the pattern, you can also change the pattern.
Yes.
If it starts with you, then you can be that catalyst of what it can change. So
Yeah.
that's really powerful.
No, and I love that you said that too, because I think of when I think of like patterns too, well, I think this is just the family therapist in me. My brain goes to like we see a lot of patterns generationally. And like,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, I will say a lot of generational trauma is passed down. And even though I just said it starts with me, there's actually a famous book called It Didn't Start With Me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
about that. It's about how generational trauma can be passed through generations.
Mm-hmm.
yes, it is not your fault that perhaps maybe there is some sort of negative experience occurring across your family generations,
Yeah.
but it is your responsibility, to break that cycle. But
Yeah.
it takes, I mean, and as I said, they don't call it generational trauma, but I mean that this spans through multiple generations. So like, it's not your fault that you don't see it. Like that's why they
Mm-hmm.
call it that. That's the
Mm-hmm.
nature of the word.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you said a minute ago that it's easier. It's easier to say, I'm not responsible. It's easier to say it's not my choice. I have an image that we teach in our program, and if you just imagine that you're on the beach and you're looking at the
mhm.
sun and it's over on the right side, and you're looking at the clouds, it's over on the left side. I imagine that our brains are much like a river floating downstream or a
Mm.
fish, that our
Yeah.
brains are naturally pulled toward what is easier, toward
Yeah.
seeing what's wrong, toward looking at we don't like about our lives. But
Yep.
once we recognize the pattern is the moment we can change the inertia to change the direction that we're going in that river. We can start swimming upstream to become that chain breaker, to become that person that decides, you know what, my mom yelled at me or abused me or whatever happened, and I am going to be the one that makes a
The-
difference for my kids. And you really show up with that energy, and that intention fuels everything and passions all of those choices.
Well, I mean, science, right, says that, I mean, you talked about like neuroplasticity,
Yep.
is that we can literally, well, from that beautiful metaphor you just used with like the sun and the beach and, like we can like change those neural pathways in our brain if we, as again, I always say like patterns, if you have a certain pattern, how to combat it is build a practice behind it and start doing
Mm-hmm.
things repeatedly. Somebody told me today, which I'm sure you would enjoy, is like if you always get up every day, and every day you put your pants on with your right leg first and your
Yep.
left leg, like consciously the next day, like try, like think about putting it on with your left leg. I think
Right.
that's basically what you want to do with your thoughts in
Yes.
times where you feel like maybe you're, maybe in victimhood, or, I guess and the thing is too, this thing in our heads
Huh.
is wired to go that, like that, I think was
Exactly.
that for me was the big thing. I'm like, this thing in my head right here is gonna take me to that easier place. And it
Mm-hmm.
want like whatever past neural pathway that has been already dug out in my brain, that's the route it's gonna go if I
Yep.
don't literally like take make the conscious choice to change that.
Exactly. And that's where we need the pattern interrupt to interrupt those automatic responses. I automatically
Yeah.
put my left leg in first before my right leg. But if you're recognizing that that's a pattern you want to choose, then what do you do to interrupt that pattern? We have 8 FUD tools, we call it. FUD is an abbreviation for fear, uncertainty, doubt, dread, and discouragement. So we're
Mm.
working on a game launch toward conquering FUD, and that's why like we're using all these words. But so the FUD experiences, we have 8 FUD tools to interrupt those patterns. Okay, what can you really do if you
Mm.
have an automatic instinct to yell at your kids, if you're noticing you're doing something wrong? I get triggered by messes because
Mm.
I tend to take on the responsibility for I have to be the one to clean that up. And
Clean it
I'm,
up. Yeah.
the rescuer mode of it's my responsibility, but it's really not. I just, as a mom, automatically defaulted
Oh
into that
yeah,
for
yeah.
a long time, right? But what can I do instead of automatically defaulting to that? And really just finding a pattern that's going to interrupt that. It could be breathing. It could be
Yes, yes.
just like putting your hand on front of your mouth, like I'm choosing not to speak for 5 seconds. It could be I need to leave the room for 5 minutes. I'll be right back. Like choose a pattern, interrupt whatever is going to help you to recognize I don't want to keep doing it the old way. I don't want to keep
Hmm.
creating the damage in that relationship by responding automatically. I want to be intentional. I want to feel my home with, and then you decide. You decide what you want to be and how you want to show up, and then choose that pattern, interrupt, like you said, practice it again and
Yes,
again, just
again, yes.
every time, and it's gonna come into changing. Yep.
And I will say, I'll share from personal experience. You've done the work, or you've been on your journey for a bit when something that, because I mean, let's be honest, we all have triggers. I always tell my clients and everybody, I'm like, "Y- the goal of like being regulated and doing this kind of work isn't to prevent ever being triggered again, because
Mm-hmm.
life is going to life for the rest of our
Yep.
lives.
Keep
There's
lifing.
always going to be something that will bother us, activate us. But the goal is to, once these said things happen,
Mm-hmm.
is sit with them and not, not react as so like impulsively on them, to
Mm-hmm.
actually have like a response. And
Yep.
I will say, you've done, some work on yourself or have healed or whatever you want to call it, is when something that would have maybe triggered you in the past, like doesn't really impact you as much anymore. Or like,
Yep.
yeah, you notice it and you're like, okay, like I acknowledge it, I notice
Mm-hmm.
it, but then you're like, it doesn't, cripple you. Because I will share, like I used to suffer from like pretty severe anxiety, like very
Mm-hmm.
like couldn't, I mean, I'm currently medicated for it. I mean, I actually want to wean off my medication, but that's another story.
Mm.
Um, but like I would wake up having panic attacks, and so like, and that was very frustrating
Mm.
but it was my body telling me something, and
Yeah.
it's taking me years of therapy, of being medicated too, combination, and like also just my spiritual journey to
Mm-hmm.
get me now to a point of regulation where I am like, I do feel like, yes, I have stressors. I'm an adult.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Everybody does, but I
Exactly.
am at that point where I'm like, okay, like I am very regulated, and I've worked so hard to get here
Mm-hmm.
that anything that gets in my way of that, I'm like, nope, nope. Like,
Yeah, yeah, you're choosing intentionally. One of the books that helped me to find that place was The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
yeah,
He talks about the analogy of what it's like when you're driving down the road and you're noticing signs passing, and you notice a pink house and you're like, whatever. And you
yeah.
notice this red car that's the same color as your old boyfriend. And then you see a girl in that car. And then all of a sudden you get
And you're like,
triggered,
oh my God,
right?
yeah,
So it's the reactions to the experience. And what I like to do is imagine that my body somatically, those emotions and experiences are flowing through me. And when I notice those trigger experiences, it's kind of like I'm experienced as the pinball machine. And when I just allow myself, like you're saying, to feel it, to notice it, and
mm-hmm,
just to sit with it, it's really a physical awareness, like what am I feeling in my body and where is that coming from? So I like to do creative visualization sometimes. We'll have people imagine the shape and the image and the texture, and then what signal, what message is that emotion wanting to tell you? Just really
yeah,
tuning in, sitting and listening with it. Yeah, it's so powerful. Just like this is life. This you're going
yeah.
to keep experiencing it, and that's part of the unfolding. And the less you can get triggered the better, but just have compassion wherever you're at right now.
And I love to, like, because I'm emotions, feelings person. Like, and like, this is called the feeling. This is why I started this podcast.
Yeah.
Like, to allow people and be like, it is okay to feel your feelings. And I think we're moving, I'm sure you would agree, in the right direction of
Mhm.
like, we're more aware of our emotions. We are sitting with them, as you said, and
Mhm.
processing them, because I have found when you, and I'm not, like I always say, to my therapist has told me, I say, we cannot as much as we want to, we can't control our emotions because they're just part of us. And they're gonna come. They're like waves, right? They're like waves in the ocean, but we
Mhm.
can manage them. So
Mhm.
like I always use the metaphor of like, you can choose, like you're in the ocean and you see these waves come, and they're always going to be there. You can choose whether you want to dive under it. You can choose if
Mm.
you want to get knocked over by it. You can
Mhm.
ride it if you want to, whatever you want to do, but like you have, that's your managing your
Mhm.
emotions. And I think it's so important when you are healing and doing your inner work, is to sit with your emotions, as uncomfortable as they can be at sometimes,
Right.
because
Mhm.
I think we live in a society now that I don't know why, where maybe it's generational, but as I was kind of saying, the newer generations, I think, are learning emotional intelligence and really flexing their emotional abilities earlier on,
Mhm.
and not suppressing them, because suppressing your emotions, in my opinion, won't lead to any beneficial and impact in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm reading a book right now called Shift, and he brings a lot of science into it. I believe he's a psychologist, doctor, some of sort. I don't remember his name at the moment, but In there, he talks about two different worldviews possibilities. Like one worldview is allowing yourself to feel the emotions. And one
Hmm.
worldview he brings in of his grandma as the example. She lived through the Holocaust. She would allow herself to express her emotions because he saw from a child's eyes once a year. And then he realized as he was growing up that it was more frequently than that that he would talk to her friends and all of that stuff. But there's ways that you can choose to influence your emotions because there are three core things that create emotions. Emotions are both created from thoughts, but
Yeah,
also instigated from the body, right? It's a
correct.
give and
Yep.
receive, and so you can choose images intentionally in your mind that will
Uh-huh.
create an emotion in your body. You can choose words in your mind that will intentionally create an emotion in your body. So I believe that we're not just subject to be acted upon and we're helpless of what we're feeling. I believe we can choose intentionally and deliberately, and that's what I train our clients to do. That is mental fitness, pointing your mind toward
Hmm.
what you want to experience. Visualize the results that you want to create. What does done look like? What does your process look like? All of those things that really does give them power to choose.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I will share share your sentiment about like how powerful our minds are if we are able to train them or do some mindset work or just some minor reframing because it like I mean it happens to me all the time where I'll just even be talking on a podcast and I'll say something like, oh yeah, like our brains are wired for the negative, like, and then I'll say something and it'll be like, yeah, like even in this situation, like I don't know, something negative, I forget, like, or like maybe it was, I forget, forgive me, I can't think of an example right now, but like it's just like it proves that like it's almost like it's that default. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's why I say to people, that's why therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy have been proven to be so effective because that's what
Mm-hmm.
they do. They try to rewire your brain
Mm-hmm.
to, as you said, to create different thoughts or create different. I know dialectical is a lot of speaking and
Mm-hmm.
words
Mm-hmm.
versus imagery, but it's like using those, tools or assets like
Mm-hmm.
tools, excuse me, words or visualizations or what
Mm-hmm.
have you, to get your mind in the right place so then
Yeah.
your emotions can follow that path.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Yeah, there is the default that happens automatically, but there is absolutely the thing that's more important or the thing that's higher, wherever your brain is focused. If you're focused on what will bring me joy today, you're going to
Mm,
find the answer to that question. If you're focused
I
on what's
love that.
wrong with me, you're going to
Yes.
find the answer to that question. So asking magic questions will shift your focus. And I found in my journey that eventually I've been able to train my brain so it's no longer floating downstream, but intentionally, I call it the heliotropic effect, where I'm
Okay.
being pulled by my desires toward what I want. It feels like I'm addicted to accomplishing, not to prove myself, but because actually accomplishing brings me joy.
I
Just in
love
that moment of doing the thing. So it doesn't have to remain the default downward stream, right? We can
it.
choose to focus on what we want, focus on our purpose, focus on what brings us fulfillment.
Absolutely. And that's what I will share that, with that sentiment with you as well, is that that's the one thing, and it could be different for anybody, but for me, that's the my purpose and like my passion that I found in my life. I'm so grateful that I'm lucky that I found it, but that's my guiding light when I'm, yes, because I'm human, right? Like we're all
Yeah.
human. I'm gonna have a day that's frustrating or I'm tired or yeah, I was stuck in traffic or, I'm just, maybe just cranky,
Yep. It
like
happens.
I'm gonna, and
Mm-hmm.
like but then I like, if I have take the time and then I am like, no, like, but this is like, I go back to my purpose and my passion and what I do. And I'm
Yeah.
lucky that I'm able to do this for a living.
Yeah.
I then I'm like, okay, but this is
I
why you
love
keep
that.
going, Danielle. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
Yep.
this is like, it's like, yes, and I'm all about too. Like if you're having, I don't want to discount people, like, like, and you're like get caught up in a default setting and you kind of just sit there for a little bit. Like I always use the term of like make it a place of reference, not a place
Mm-hmm.
of residence.
Love it. Mm-hmm.
Like reference it, like it's so it could
Mm-hmm.
be like, yes, I was there, like
Mm-hmm.
sit with it for a little bit, but don't make like it's okay to go on like a little vacation from to there,
Hmm.
but don't set up and put, set up camp there and move
Right.
there
Yeah.
because that's when I think we people get, and and I've, as I said, struggling with anxiety, but I've also had depressive episodes, and that's where that unfortunately sits, and then
Hmm.
get there, so then it's even harder for you
Hmm.
to get back on track,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
we all can do. And
Yeah.
it's I want to
Absolutely.
normalize. It's very normal
Sure.
for,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you to get stuck sometimes.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that motivation comes from remembering your purpose, that fuel. There was some study I read about once that said when you pause and get calm, the Mohawk center of your brain that automatically looks at who you are, your identity, like what matters to you, where your purpose is, that part automatically lights up. And
Mm,
that brings me joy because I want to help people learn to pause and just
mm,
consider like, okay, what really matters in this moment? You might be feeling
yes.
this heaviness. That's true. But who are you and what are you born to do?
Mhm.
And I know that those are huge questions, but the more you ask it, the more you will find the answer.
Well, I mean, to your point, this is like, it pains me to say this. I feel that a lot of people, like, I mean, we live in a world with 8 billion people. I mean, mind you, some of them are children, and they're not able to
Mm,
have these conscious thoughts, but I would say a lot of people, if you ask them like, who are you,
mm-hmm,
they would say their occupation, they would
mm-hmm.
say their role,
Yeah.
they would say, and it's like, no, it's like, who are you, like,
Yeah.
who. And it's like, and I've been thinking about like what, like, I think about when somebody asks me like who I am, like I just be like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm me. But then I would also like, it's like, I think there was something I saw. It was like, try to describe yourself without like what you do, where you live, like, and it's like, it's very hard to
For
do.
sure. That's exactly what that Michael Singer book talks about.
Okay,
Like,
sure.
first
Yeah.
identifying who is me? Who is
Yeah.
that? The who? Yeah, am I my job? Am I my marriage? Like, who is me? It's such a
Yeah.
beautiful conversation and a beautiful question to ask because it takes you into questioning, okay, what does that mean to me? Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I know I'm a big like parts person too. So working with like IFS, so I'm like,
Yes.
I always think, unfortunately, a lot of us, I think, will say a lot of our parts are
Mm-hmm.
who we are, but that's not who we are at the core. And
Right.
it takes a little bit of work, a little bit of digging deep. And also too, I will say something that has transformed my life, which are these are very simple things,
Mm-hmm.
but has made such a big impact on my life, is having very strong core values.
Yes.
I think I always say to people, and talking about patterns, I always say you can tell a lot about a person by their patterns and how they show up in your life, what they do, their behaviors, and you can see what they value without them saying a word.
Mm-hmm.
And just
Mm-hmm.
how they move through the world, you can see what they value. And
Yeah.
it's taking me a little, I mean, I still have some mastery to do there. I'm early on my that like aha moment in my life, but I've reached that point where I'm like, Look at the patterns. Just look at the
Mm-hmm.
behaviors and the patterns of behavior, and that's all that needs to be, and I'm not saying to judge people, but just like be aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
And even in myself. Um,
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I
I'll
can
share
agree.
with you. It's so funny. Like and my therapist thinks I'm a nut job. But because I live this, I'll call it a self-examined life, and even outside of my purpose of helping people and coaching people and being a therapist, I think we're all on this journey to understand ourselves a little bit
Mhm,
more,
mhm,
because we only get one shot in this thing, and I've been getting the feedback, like I've been noticing, because I notice,
mhm.
what people give me feedback, and like good feedback, and people always say to me like, Danielle, you're so sweet, and I'm like, oh, like I don't like that, and I'm like, so recently I actually literally had a conversation with my therapist the other day about this, and I was like, all right, like I'm a self-aware person, so I really want my insides and what I put out in the world and what I project to be what people say back to me. So like, and I was like, I really wouldn't consider myself a sweet person.
Hmm.
And I was like, and then we like unpacked a little bit, and it's a nuance, it's a word thing. It's for me, it's like I know it means like kind and thoughtful, but like I
Hmm.
would rather you say that, like you're so kind or you're so
Hmm.
thoughtful, and say, because I'm like in my brain, the word sweet, there's a very negative connotation because I
Interesting.
associate it with like sugar and like just like
Mm-hmm.
being a little superficial.
Ah.
And but like and but no and but I know it's a compliment, but like I had to stop myself, and that's I guess like what you're talking about is doing looking inside and being like, all right, yes, it's a compliment, but it's activating something in here,
Mm-hmm.
and I figured out why. So recently when people have told me that, I asked them, I'm like, when you say the word sweet,
Beautiful.
do you mean this? And
Yeah.
they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay, like but like it's so annoying. I know people are probably like, what? And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to like work on myself better
Clarify.
and make sure that like I'm I'm walking through the world in a way that like like that's core because one of my core values is like compassion and empathy. So I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure like I'm aligned. That's basically like my gut, like my
Yeah,
test
absolutely. And
to
what
make
you're
sure that
doing
I'm aligned.
is huge because you're not just listening to the default story in your head. You're not just thinking this word sweet means this thing that I don't like, and you're questioning, you're speaking out loud, you're making what's invisible seen and asking, when you say this, is this actually what you mean? So challenging that and getting real evidence from other people, that's what a lot of people don't do. They just keep asking the stories in their
In
head.
their
They
own
don't
head, yeah.
speak it. So that's powerful. That's really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually I say that with my clients too. I'm now share my little a little bit of my secret sauce, which is not the secret sauce because it's just. But I actually ask them when I start working with them, I say, give me three adjectives that you think you are. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, and it could be anything. I was like
Hmm.
the first three that come to mind, and then I actually then I ask for the five people that they're closest with, and I ask them those questions
Hmm.
and to see if there's any alignment. And then at
Ah.
the end when we're done, the hope is that they're the same
Mm.
and that there's
Yeah.
more alignment in your life. And then I share with, I share with the person, not the friends, but I share with them. I'm like, listen, like these I and like, I was like these are the gaps because I'm like
Hmm.
I think when you're aligned in your most authentic self, there shouldn't be any gap in
Hmm.
I mean, of course there's little nuances like I was saying the wording, but that's
Yeah.
just a Danielle thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yep. It really does matter the way that you see yourself. And I love that you said that. It reflects in the way that other people see you. Those
Mhm.
beliefs that you have, even though you might never say it. I'm a kind person. Like the way that you see yourself will reflect into what other people believe about you.
And also too, like I always say like how you show up and your actions in the
Yeah.
world will
Hmm.
speak volumes to what your values are. Like that's what
Hmm.
I feel like you're as a person, you are your core values in action.
Yeah. Yep.
Because what
Absolutely.
are they if you're not putting something out in there?
Hmm.
They're just words then.
Right. Yep.
They're just sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah. And values really do need to be decided intentionally. That's not going to come from a default thought process.
Which
So
is
it
the
really is.
problem,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
is
Yep.
that a lot of our value systems, I mean, this is a whole nother podcast. Jeez, I could on this all. Is that our values are kind of unfortunately like set up to be on this default. And it's like it's
Mm.
not till we're older that we learn like, oh, and we challenge them and we
Yeah.
get curious about them and we're like, maybe that value isn't something that I value, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's cool. Yep. It's the inner work. It's beautiful.
It really is. It's messy, but it's beautiful.
Yep. The messy middle. That's what we call it.
Oh,
Yep.
I love it. I love that. The messy middle. That's
Yep.
great. I love that. Well, Penny, this has been just been such a lovely, enlightening conversation, and thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you, Danielle. It was such a joy. Love talking with you.
Likewise. And as usual, you can find the Feeling and Healing podcast on YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify.